faithfully convey value and interpret great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today I'll be interpreting the book Overcoming Perfectionism for you. How do you view perfectionism? Feel free to leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Perfectionists set high standards for themselves in work and life, which can lead to both positive and negative outcomes. On the positive side, perfectionism pushes people to do their best and achieve outstanding results. On the negative side, excessive pursuit of perfection can cause a lot of stress. Once something isn't done well, perfectionists engage in self-criticism, leading to negative emotions like anxiety and low self-esteem. Some perfectionists worry about not performing well, repeatedly procrastinate, and end up achieving nothing. How can we distinguish between positive and negative perfectionism? And how can we overcome negative perfectionism? This is what the book explores. The book is authored by three British psychologists. The main author, Roz Shafran, is a professor of psychology at University College London and the vice chair of the British Association for Behavioral and Cognitive Psychotherapies. He received the British Psychological Society's Award for Distinguished Contributions in 2010. Next, I'll interpret the main content of the book in two parts. First, what are the characteristics of negative perfectionism, and what problems does it cause? Second, how to overcome negative perfectionism. Let's start with the first part. What are the characteristics of negative perfectionism, and what problems does it cause? To facilitate distinction, the author uses perfectionism to refer to negative perfectionism, which is the excessive pursuit of perfection that leads to negative outcomes. Optimalism is used to refer to positive perfectionism, which allows people to pursue high goals with a positive mindset and gain satisfaction in the process. So the book's title, Overcoming Perfectionism, specifically means overcoming negative perfectionism. Both perfectionists and optimalists set high standards for themselves, but they have two significant differences. The first difference is that perfectionists judge their self-worth based on whether they achieve their goals, while optimalists do not think this way. In the eyes of perfectionists, their value solely depends on achieving goals. If a goal isn't met, they harshly criticize themselves, believing they are worthless. Therefore, perfectionists fear failure intensely. Once they fail, they feel worthless and lose motivation to move forward. On the other hand, many perfectionists don't feel happy even after achieving their goals. They think their targets weren't ambitious enough. Anyone could reach that level and set even higher goals next time. I agree, we said. As you can see, perfectionists are trapped in a contradictory cycle. They judge their self-worth by whether goals are achieved, yet dismiss their accomplishments when successful. Combined with inevitable failures, this leaves perfectionists perpetually self-critical and frustrated. Optimalists, however, actively affirm themselves upon success, feeling deep fulfillment. Even without achieving goals, optimalists still value themselves, learn from experiences, and strive to improve next time. The second difference is that perfectionists pursue goals at all costs. High standards often demand heavy sacrifices. Optimists weigh costs. If outweighing benefits, they'll abandon the goal. Perfectionists don't. They deem goals non-negotiable, regardless of sacrifice. For example, both might aim to be top salesperson. Pursuing this, optimalists notice excessive overtime reduces family time and harms health. After cost-benefit analysis, optimists may quit. But perfectionists persist, even with strained relationships or health issues, once committed. The reason, as stated earlier, is perfectionists tying self-worth to goal attainment. They fear failure proves worthlessness, leaving no choice but persistence. This concludes perfectionism's traits. Now, what problems does perfectionism cause? The author categorizes these into negative behaviors and psychological barriers. First, negative behaviors. The author details three: procrastination, avoidance, and, as noted earlier, perfectionists' fear of failure causes stress and anxiety when facing challenging tasks. Wanting to procrastinate until the last minute. When perfectionists realize they can't delay any longer and must start, there's no time left for a perfect performance. Faced with unsatisfactory results, perfectionists criticize themselves, feeling worthless, which intensifies their fear of failure. Some even avoid tasks altogether to prevent failure. Some feel unable to clean their room spotlessly, so they abandon cleaning altogether, leaving it messy. Others skip exams because they think they can't get first place. Ordinary people believe imperfect action is better than inaction. It builds experience for improvement. But perfectionists feel avoiding tasks spares them failure and self-criticism, creating false relief. Affected by perfectionism, the second negative behavior is compulsive checking. Perfectionists repeatedly verify work to ensure flawlessness. Rereading articles multiple times or recalculating results lowers efficiency.
Another common manifestation is social comparison. New hires comparing themselves to veterans, average people to models, fueling dissatisfaction and higher standards.
The third negative behavior is counterproductive actions. This means perfectionists use methods intended to boost performance that actually undermine it. Students pulling all-nighters for exams end up drowsy and unfocused. Office workers hitting the gym after overtime invite health issues instead of wellness. Having covered negative behaviors, next are psychological barriers from perfectionism. The author details 3 anxiety disorders, OCD, and perfectionists. Constant worry about underperformance and fear of failure traps them in catastrophic thinking, sustaining chronic anxiety that may escalate to physical symptoms like palpitations or dizziness. The second psychological barrier is obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. To eliminate anxiety and gain a sense of security, some perfectionists adopt compulsive, repetitive behaviors. If someone worries their room isn't clean enough, they might repeatedly clean it. Also, as mentioned earlier, repeatedly checking work is a manifestation of OCD. Deep down, they know these compulsive behaviors aren't necessary, but they can't control themselves, always fearing something bad will happen if they don't do it. The third psychological barrier brought by perfectionism is depression. As stated before, even when perfectionists achieve goals, they dismiss their accomplishments. Not to mention, in many cases, they fail to achieve their goals. Therefore, perfectionists are always immersed in self-criticism and frustration, while fear of failure robs them of interest and motivation to act. If this state persists long-term, perfectionists may develop depressive symptoms, becoming low-spirited, melancholic, and withdrawn. And, all right, to summarize the first part, both perfectionists and optimalists set high standards, but the difference is that perfectionists judge their self-worth by goal achievement and pursue goals at all costs. Goals. Perfectionism brings various negative behaviors, including procrastination, avoidance, checking, and counterproductive actions. Perfectionism can also trigger psychological disorders like anxiety, OCD, and depression. Now, in the second part, we'll discuss how to overcome perfectionism. Now, the author mainly introduces 4 methods. The first is changing irrational beliefs. Perfectionists have many irrational beliefs. For example, some think that if they don't clean the room spotlessly, others will see them as lazy. Others believe that if they don't repeatedly check work, it will inevitably go wrong. Under the influence of these beliefs, perfectionists impose overly harsh demands on themselves. To overcome perfectionism, start by changing these beliefs. The author gives 3 suggestions. The first is to conduct surveys. Perfectionists can directly ask others for their opinions on something to verify if their beliefs are correct. The author gives an example. Hannah is very particular about hygiene. She irons clothes, sheets, and towels daily, and spends a lot of time cleaning her room. To keep her home spotless, Hannah never invites friends over and forbids her kids from bringing friends home. Hannah believed her hygiene standards were only slightly higher than average, nothing extreme. She also thought pursuing cleanliness reflected one's sense of control over life.
To challenge Hannah's views, The author surveyed 8 of her friends about cleaning habits. The results shocked her.
She'd assumed ironing bed sheets was normal, but only 2 out of 8 did it. Regarding cleanliness and control, 2 agreed with Hannah, 4 were indifferent, seeing no link, and
2 thought hygiene obsessed people lacked purpose and should focus on meaningful activities.
these different perspectives made Hannah reevaluate her standards and discuss changes with the author. The second suggestion for changing irrational beliefs is behavioral experiments, testing beliefs through action. The author had a client named Jeff, a plumber. After each job, Jeff would repeatedly check invoice amounts to ensure no errors.
He'd even call clients back to confirm accuracy after returning to the office, often wasting their time.
Jeff knew this behavior exceeded normal diligence and annoyed clients, but he couldn't control his fear of miscalculating. Jeff's belief was that repeated checking reduced anxiety. But psychological research shows excessive verification actually lowers confidence and increases worry. A common experience, like doubting whether you locked the door despite checking multiple times. This worry isn't fact-based, it's an uncontrollable mental pattern. To test Jeff's belief,
The author designed a plan. Jeff would triple check invoices on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as usual.
on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, he'd check only once, recording his anxiety level immediately after.
Then, an hour later, he'd record his anxiety again to compare changes.
Jeff followed this plan for a week. He discovered that after repeatedly checking amounts, his anxiety spiked high and barely decreased after an hour. He felt strong urges to call clients back for rechecks, but with single checks, his anxiety actually lowered. At moderate anxiety levels, it kept decreasing after an hour, and he stopped obsessing. This experiment showed Jeff repeated checks were unnecessary. Once sufficed. So he changed his behavior. The third suggestion for changing irrational beliefs is shifting from black and white to continuum thinking. Black and white thinking views things as binary extremes with no middle ground, a common irrational belief. For example, a student is either a hopeless fool or a genius acing every exam. If not spotless, it's a disgraceful mess. This extreme mindset breeds perfectionism. Continuum thinking recognizes graded states between extremes. Seeing these middle options grants flexibility and freedom. How to adopt continuum thinking. Draw a horizontal line on paper with black and white beliefs at each end, e.g., hopeless fool left, genius acing every exam right. Next, reflect on observations and experiences to identify intermediate states between these poles. Other possibilities, e.g., students excelling in some subjects but struggling in others, or strong performers occasionally failing, or improving in formerly weak subjects over time. These insights broaden perspectives, reducing black and white rigidity. Behavioral experiments can reinforce continuum thinking. Suppose someone believes rooms must be either spotless or unfit for guests. After reflection, they discover acceptably tidy as a viable middle state. Next, he can personally experience these intermediate states, spending minimal time tidying, then inviting friends over to observe their reactions. Through behavioral experiments, perfectionists discover friends don't care about perfect tidiness. Hosting works fine, even with minor mess. That covers changing irrational beliefs. Now, the second method to overcome perfectionism, focus on positives while overlooking minor flaws. Achieving perfection is incredibly difficult. Most times, if you look for faults, you'll find some. Ordinary people don't judge entire efforts by minor flaws. But perfectionists ignore positives while obsessively hunting imperfections. A typo in a work report might make them deem the whole thing disastrous. Or losing temper once with their child makes them feel unfit as parents. These thoughts reinforce perfectionism, feeling harsher standards and continued self-criticism. The author suggests perfectionists learn to broaden perspectives. Focusing more on positives brings self-affirmation and helps overcome perfectionism. Specifically, when self-criticizing, write down exact thoughts, e.g., typos prove I'm careless and inferior. Also, record accompanying negative emotions, frustration, disappointment, and rate their intensity. Rate 0 for weakest, 100 for strongest. Then broaden perspectives. Identify and note overlooked positives. E.g., report content received boss praise or writing it honed analytical skills. Finally, record post-perspective shift changes in thoughts or emotions, comparing before or after. In the report example, one might realize it wasn't nearly as bad as initially thought. Though frustration lingers, its intensity drops significantly. Through such contrast exercises, perfectionists cultivate ability to notice positives spontaneously, reducing fixation on flaws. After consistent practice, perfectionists develop the ability to notice positive aspects in daily life without fixating on flaws. The third method to overcome perfectionism is reducing self-criticism. The previously covered techniques, changing irrational beliefs and focusing on positives, both help reduce self-criticism. Building on these, perfectionists can further decrease self-critical tendencies. However, the author stresses the goal is reduction, not elimination. No one completely stops self-criticism. Aiming for total elimination may backfire, creating new self-criticism when failing to achieve it. Reducing self-criticism involves two steps. First, identifying self-critical thoughts, similar to perspective broadening exercises. Perfectionists should record triggers, specific self-critical content, and resulting negative emotions. Step 2 is recognizing internal encouragement. When chronically self-critical, positive self-encouragement feels impossible. To access inner encouragement, reflect on how you treat friends. Many perfectionists are harsh on themselves, yet show friends tolerance, trust, and forgiveness regarding imperfections. Imagine what encouragement you'd offer a friend having similar self-critical thoughts. Write those words while noting emotional shifts. For example, a teacher criticized by one parent might feel worthless. If a friend faced this, you'd reassure, it's just one parent complaining. Many others praise you. Even excellent teachers can't satisfy every parent. These words represent inner encouragement, significantly improving their emotional state. Through consistent practice, inner encouragement strengthens while self-criticism weakens. When facing setbacks later, encouragement arises first instead of drowning in self-criticism.
Sometimes the voice of self-criticism can be overwhelmingly strong and hard to resist.
For such extreme cases, the author offers two suggestions. The first suggestion is to write encouraging phrases on cards. After practicing identifying encouragement for a while, perfectionists will recognize their most effective and frequently used encouraging phrases. Perfectionists can write these phrases on cards to carry with them.
When intense self-criticism strikes, pull out the cards to read or recite aloud. This effectively counters the criticism.
The second suggestion uses mindfulness meditation to accept self-criticism. Mindfulness involves observing thoughts non-judgmentally. Through mindfulness, people create distance from thoughts without becoming immersed. When self-criticism intensifies, find a quiet space, sit down, close your eyes, and observe these thoughts. Don't agree or argue. Simply observe and accept them as natural phenomena. Tell yourself, self-critical thoughts are entering my mind, or, okay, I'm having self-critical thoughts. Imagine them as a looping tape recording, just repeating sounds. You'll realize thoughts are just thoughts. You needn't believe or engage with them. With consistent mindfulness practice, self-critical thoughts naturally fade. The fourth method to overcome perfectionism is decoupling self-worth from achievement. As mentioned, perfectionism binds self-worth to high standards.
Evaluating self-worth solely by achievement milestones.
The author notes self-worth has multiple sources, both achievement-based and independent. Diversifying these sources builds flexibility and confidence, reducing perfectionism. How to achieve this? The author outlines 4 approaches. First is recognizing intrinsic value. Perfectionists should reflect, as children without achievements, they were inherently valued by family and friends. Perfectionists can list past memories where they felt valued, like joyful play with friends, sweet first dates, or warm family moments. These memories reveal inherent value in simply existing and building relationships, completely separate from achievements.
And these have nothing to do with accomplishments. Decoupling self-worth from achievement.
The second approach is documenting small daily accomplishments. Perfectionists typically fixate on unmet grand goals while overlooking minor yet valuable daily wins. Noticing these tangible, small successes helps perfectionists experience self-worth. The author suggests writing one small accomplishment daily. Examples include preparing next week's work early, planning a picnic with a partner, or calling parents to check in. Decoupling self-worth from achievement. The third approach is making current goals more flexible. Maintain high standards but adjust for practicality without demanding perfection. More actionable and less absolute. Instead of must be top salesperson this month, aim for strive for top position. If missed, analyze improvements for next month. Decoupling self-worth from achievement. The fourth approach is diversifying goals.
Perfectionists hyper-focus on few targets. Pursuing varied goals provides multiple sources of self-worth.
From work and study to health, relationships, socializing, and hobbies, life offers diverse domains with achievable goals. No need for grandeur. Personal interest suffices, e.g., daily guitar practice or pet ownership. Crucially, new goals must also follow flexibility principles, actionable without rigid demands to avoid perfectionism traps. All right, to summarize the second part, there are 4 methods to overcome perfectionism. First, use surveys and behavioral experiments to change irrational beliefs. A common irrational belief is black and white thinking. We can replace it with continuum thinking. Second, broaden perspectives to focus on positives while overlooking minor flaws. Third, reduce self-criticism and become aware of more inner encouragement. Fourth, decouple self-worth from achievement through approaches like recognizing intrinsic value, documenting small accomplishments, making goals more flexible, and diversifying goals. With that, the introduction to overcoming perfectionism in this book is almost complete. From the author's perspective, negative perfectionism is like a flower in a mirror or the moon in water, requiring great effort but yielding nothing, hindering progress and creating negative emotions. However, overcoming negative perfectionism doesn't mean becoming an optimalist. Optimalism is just one of many lifestyles. Many people don't pursue high standards, and that's fine.
Life has no standard answer. As long as your current lifestyle brings you happiness, it's right for you.
After listening to this episode, what useful methods have you learned? Can you please feel free to leave a comment below. All right, that concludes our interpretation of the book, Overcoming Perfectionism. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.